Good morning. God is interested in the freedom of the whole human race. The words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1963 in Detroit, Michigan, 50 years ago this year. God is interested in the freedom of the whole human race. So in that spirit, I wish you a blessed MLK weekend and welcome you to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Austin, whether you are here with us in person or online. I am Reverend Aaron Walter, your interim minister for Joy and Justice, one of 3 ministers serving the church. I missed you while I was out on study leave and vacation in December, so I'm so glad to be back for this service. First UU is a spiritual community dedicated to a free and responsible search for truth, meaning, and beauty. I especially want to welcome you if you are new. If you're here with us on the live stream, would you please say hello in the comments? Let us know where you're viewing from. And maybe how long you've been coming here. If you're new, how you found us. We want to get to know you. If you're here with us in person, we invite you to join us after the service for coffee and conversation. Who was here yesterday for the history workshop? All right, we had 60 people here yesterday, digging into our church history, how we feel about it, what we celebrate about it. So I also want to especially invite everyone to check out the timeline that we created with Post-it notes about our history and our feelings and our hopes and our dreams. It's in House and Hall. We come from a long tradition of seeing the spark of the divine in every person. That means we are interested in the freedom of the whole human race. So I invite you now to greet each other online or in person, the spark of divine among us. I trust we will keep getting to know each other. Now, in activism, we say we pass the mic when we have a platform to speak and we want to amplify other voices. So we pass the mic. And today it is my honor to pass the mic in worship to Alex Capitan, co-founder of the Transforming Hearts Collective, a national Unitarian Universalist organization that supports spaces for LGBTQ people to access resilience, healing, and spirituality, and to resource our faith communities and other groups for the work of radical inclusion and culture shift. We're going to be talking about some of that today. Transforming Hearts is led by 2 renowned UU religious professionals, one white, one black, and their curriculum, Transgender Inclusion in Congregations, addresses not just trans inclusion, but the big dream of seeking Dr. King's fully liberated, multiracial, beloved community. That's part of the reason we're reflecting on trans inclusion today as part of our MLK service, as part of a time that is grounded in civil rights and racial justice at its core. We know that Black lives matter, and that means Black trans lives matter. We are here in this church for gender and reproductive justice and bodily autonomy, so we affirm that Black trans women and non-binary people matter. We are talking about it today because the Texas legislature returned last week. an exhale. Sometimes we laugh to let go of some feelings that are hard, and there is real fear and real risk among our trans-inclusive families and our friends in this state at this time. So we come together today to nourish ourselves. We come together today from different places of understanding about the spectrum of gender and many things in a hopes of finding a common spiritual ground in our search for truth and meaning and compassion in human relations. One technical note, when you hear Alex mention the Texas UU Justice Ministry, that's our state action network, our church is a member. Alex is talking about the fact that the Justice Ministry got grants from your sibling congregation, Live Oak UU, and from the entire coalition of North Texas UU congregations to fund the 6-week trans inclusion course free for all Texas UU churches. So we're joining our UU siblings, First UU San Antonio, San Marcos, Northwoods in Spring, Bay Area UU in Houston, San Gabriel in Georgetown, Wildflower in Austin, and many others. However, your wonderful Director of Religious Education, Kelly Stokes, was ahead of the curve and had already purchased the program for this church. We were one of only 4 churches that already had it in our religious education curriculum. So when you hear Alex thank TechSujum, I want you to also be thinking, thank you, Kelly Stokes. And now I pass the mic to Alex Capitan.
Good morning. I'm so delighted to be with you all today. And I'm so grateful to Texas UU Justice Ministry for the invitation to be part of this special worship service. Here in this time, when we are creating sacred space together, when we are gathering from different physical, spiritual, emotional, and ancestral locations, it feels important to locate myself and invite you to reflect on your location as well. I'm joining you today from my home near the Great Falls. I live where the river the Abenaki peoples call Quinnetagak, or Long River, meets the Mohawk Trail, in the place called Peskiamskit by the Pecumtuck Nation and Greenfield, Massachusetts by white settlers. It's not far from the invisible corner where Massachusetts, Vermont, and New Hampshire meet. My ancestors have lived in this river valley and in eastern Massachusetts and in Wisconsin farmland and in the steel mills of Ohio, and before that, Germany, Hungary, and England. Their names were Capitania, Bergdorf, Daniel, Pierce, Orange. I come from preachers and farmers and engineers and artists and teachers. I have other ancestors who have made it possible for me to be here today, too. As a queer and genderqueer person, I would not be here without generations of people before me who resisted oppressive norms of gender and sexuality and imagined a different reality into being. Feinberg, Murray, Roberts, Kramer, Ginsburg. I also follow in the path of white anti-racism organizers, activists, and teachers. Braden, Liuzzo, Reeb, Woolman, Kelly Foster. As we gather together today, center ourselves and pause to become fully present in this space this morning. I want to invite you to join me in calling your ancestors into this place, those who forged a path that has made your life possible. As I light our chalice this morning, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, bring these ancestors of yours into your mind and into your heart. Thank you for that. Feel the power of all those souls that have brought each of us to this place. We are part of a larger fabric, held in a larger web and purpose. Let us worship together.
Good morning. I'm Tomas Medina, and I will be your lay leader today, and I'm very excited to be here. Also, I want to, in the tradition of passing the mic, thank Liz Nilsson, who is going to be your lay leader today, but she swapped with me so that I'd have the opportunity to reflect on an experience I had when I was a lay leader 2 weeks ago. So thank you, Liz. Our call to worship today is by the Reverend Ade Kraba, who is a Black UU minister and spiritual director who serves the San Marcos UU Fellowship and the UUs of New Braunfels. Also, she facilitated the BIPOC listening circle that I was lucky enough to be a part of last fall, and we're excited that she will be our worship leader here on February 18th. Her writing is called To Remember. Spirit of life, we have come here today to remember what some are intent on making us forget. To remember a man who fought to end segregation. To remember a man who marched to counter prejudice and oppression. To remember a man who is filled with peace and hope. To remember a man with promise and a dream. To remember a man with a voice that rang out for justice and freedom. All these things we remember and honor in the legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and a life lived well in service to all. May it be so. And now I invite you to rise in body and spirit as you're willing and able, and to sing hymn 1040 in your Till hymnal, Hush.
right. Not always. It won't last always. Together each Sunday we affirm the mission of this congregation, which was written and is lived out every day by you, by us, the people. Will you read it with me? Together we nourish souls, transform lives, and do justice to build the beloved community.
So this is that reflection that I mentioned that I had been doing since I last lay led, which was 2 weeks ago. And it's serving as our moment for beloved community. Is being white, straight, and cisgender the norm, and being everything else a deviation from the norm? We've gotten into the habit here at First UU of introducing our readings by giving a little bit of background on the authors. As far as I know, this practice was started a few years ago when a lay leader who is a member of the BIPOC community took it upon herself to do a little research on the authors of the readings she would be doing. She shared some of her research with the congregation before the reading. The woman told me the reason she did this was because she thought it was important that the congregation know the perspectives of the writers of the readings. I understand from our ministers that this is an increasingly common practice in UU worship. In the last few months at First UU, it has brought me a lot of joy that many of our readings have been from writers whose communities have voices that have not often been centered, i.e. trans voices, queer voices, voices of members of the BIPOC community. But I was faced with a quandary when, a couple of weeks ago, I served as a lay leader for the first time in years, and I needed to come up with introductions of the authors of our readings. All I could find was that they were women. One of them had European heritage, and the other had a Palestinian father and an American mother. I could find no mention as to whether they were straight, identified with the gender they were assigned at birth, or identified as members of the BIPOC community. So I thought the safe thing to do would be to not mention these identities at all and do the best I could with identifying information I had. But does Unitarian Universalism call us to do the safe thing or transform lives and do justice, things that can be uncomfortable along the way? I thought to myself, wait, when a writer identifies as a person of color, we mentioned that. If a writer identifies as queer, we mentioned that. If someone identifies as trans, we mention that. When we can't find anything about these identities, we correctly make no assumptions. Problem is, when someone identifies as white, straight, and or cisgendered, there's often nothing about these identities in their bios or on their Wikipedia page. And that is the crux of the problem. Since we can't confirm these identities, we often say nothing. But if we only talk about identities when someone is not white, not straight, and not cis, then we're being complicit in the assumption that someone is right, straight, and cis unless stated otherwise. I don't want to be, and I don't want my church to be, complicit in perpetuating these identities as the norm. I've been reflecting on this and discussing it with our ministers, and as far as I can tell, there are 3 potential solutions to this problem. One is to explicitly state unknown when we don't know these identities. Another is only to do readings by folks for whom we know these identities so that we can explicitly state them, including when they're white, cis, and or straight. And finally, my preferred solution, continue to center voices from people who identify as trans, queer, Black, Indigenous, or other people of color. This is important for many reasons. One, when those of us who are members of traditionally silenced communities hear our voices, it helps make us feel safe and welcome. 2, all of our souls need the nourishment that comes from listening to voices of folks that are different from us. And 3, it reminds us that to do true justice work, we need to proactively ensure that we're listening to all voices to understand what they want and need from us. I share this experience with you, my church community, not to ask that next time you introduce someone, you identify their sexual orientation, gender identity, racial identity, physical abilities, age, etc., Instead, I invite you to be on the lookout for how, without intending it, you may be participating in behavior that perpetuates the harmful assumption that some folks are the norm and others the deviants. And then, when you have identified such behavior, I further invite you to think about what actions you will take to disrupt these practices. Your disruptions will help transform not only your life, but the lives of others. I have more to do. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Tomas. The musician Mahalia Jackson could be heard faintly in the recording of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, calling out, "Tell him about the dream, Martin." And in that spirit, the musicians in our services help lift us up and remind us of our dreams. Today we welcome Caleb DeCasper as our featured musician, an ACL Fest performer this year, nominated this year for Austin Music Awards for Best Vocals and Electronics. And I will turn it over to Caleb to tell us more. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Before I start, I just want to say a little blurb so that we can tie in why I'm singing things. First of all, it's fun, so get with it. Follow me on Spotify. And then second of all, I released an album about a year ago now called Femboy, and the reason why I released that was because I kept having meetings with higher up people in the music industry, and their answer would always be, you need to tone it down. One explicitly said that's too gay. So I didn't believe them, and so I made an album about being too gay. So that's where. So this one's about Johnny. Every time Johnny comes around, he can never be good. He's always got to bring me down and make my heart sink to the ground. He won't tell me that I am pretty, he won't tell me I am neat. He won't tell me anything that makes me feel complete. Be good, Johnny, oh be good, Johnny. Johnny, why won't you be good? Be good, Johnny, oh be good, Johnny. Johnny, why won't you be good? How come you're always looking at girls while we are walking outside? When I remember how just last week you said I'll make you feel alive. I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm tired of doing this work. Big ol' Johnny, oh, big ol' Johnny, and stop making me hurt. Be good, Johnny, oh, be good, Johnny. Johnny, why won't you be good? Be good, Johnny, oh, be good, Johnny. Johnny, why won't you be good? Be good, Johnny, oh, be good, Johnny, oh, Johnny, why won't you be good? Be good, Johnny, oh, be good, Johnny, oh, Johnny, why won't you be good? Johnny doesn't deserve my love, and he doesn't deserve my time. But he is all I'm thinking of, and I can't get him out of my mind. Every time that I am with him, I feel so out of sight. Big ol' Johnny, oh, big ol' Johnny, be good with all your might. Be good, Johnny, oh, be good, Johnny. Johnny, why won't you be good? Be good. oh, be good, Johnny. Johnny, why won't you be good? Be good. I said, oh, be good, Johnny. Oh, be good, Johnny. Johnny, why won't you be good? Johnny, Johnny, be good. Johnny, 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 why won't you be good? Be good, Johnny, oh, be good, Johnny. Johnny, why won't you be good? Be good, Johnny, oh, be good, Johnny, oh. Johnny, why won't you be? Johnny, why won't you be? Johnny, why won't you be? Johnny, why won't you be good?
Whoa. Hi, good morning. I'm Kelly Stokes, and I'd like to invite the children to come up for the best view of the pictures for the story that we're about to hear. Come on up. It's okay. Come on up and join me. Today we're talking about justice and we're talking about inclusion, and I just want to let all y'all know that if you need any help, you can ask these folks, because they're really good at that. You might have read this book at school. You might have, yes. I'm going to talk about this book. So first, before we start the book, I'm going to tell you why I'm reading this book today. So one of the really cool things about this city, Austin, that we live in, is that this is where the laws are made for the whole state of Texas. Have any of you been to the place where the laws are made? Do you know what it's called?
Washington, D.C.
Well, that's where the laws are made for the whole country, right? That's exactly right, Jack. But here in Texas, all the laws are made where? In the Capitol. Have any of you been to the Capitol, been to a protest or a rally or anything like that before? I think you have. Yeah. So the lawmakers have just come back to Austin to start making laws again this year, and sometimes the lawmakers make laws that hurt people. And we put on our yellow shirts, and we go down to the Capitol, and we say, hey, we're Unitarian Universalists. Hurting people is against our religion. Can you please change that law? And we all go and we listen to speakers, and if you're you probably also get to play on the grass and see all the statues, right? And there's often lots of activities. This is my fan I got the last time I was there. Some of you might have gotten that too, right? So today this is my shirt that I wear. It's a Side with Love. I've got everything I would wear if I was going to the Capitol. I've got my chalice necklace. I have my water bottle. I put on sunscreen. If I was coming with you, I would probably bring some books to read to you too, and I've got my fan, yeah. So today we're going to read a story it's about children, but it's about children and someone really special who taught us so much about what to do when we go to the Capitol to talk about the laws. Who is the person we're celebrating tomorrow, Evelyn?
Martin Luther King Jr. because he died. I know which one.
Sarah?
So it's the King's birthday tomorrow, and he should black people and white people should be fair.
Yes, thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, Sarah. That's exactly right. We are celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King tomorrow because he taught us so much, didn't he? He is the only person in America who gets their own holiday just for them. We used to have more, but now we've changed those holidays because they weren't good, and now he's the only one. Isn't that cool? So if you can see the book like this, you might want to scooch over if you want to see the pictures better. We're going to read this book. It's called A Sweet Smell of Roses by Angela Johnson and illustrated by Eric Velasquez. And it's about Martin Luther King, but it's also about some other people who went to hear him speak. Some people maybe just like you, about 60 years ago. After a night of soft rain, there is a sweet smell of roses. As my sister, Minnie, and I slip past Mama's door and out of the house down Charlotte Street. Do you notice this little red thing? You can look for something red on every page. Past the early morning milkman, over the cobbled bridge, and through the curb market to where everybody waits to march. Minnie and I are only waist high to most of them. Waist high, Minnie and me. Waist high, holding hands and waiting to march. There is a sweet smell of roses as everyone waits for Dr. King to speak. And the colors, bright light from the sun on the flowers beside the road, as we listen to Dr. King on the megaphone say, "We are right. We march for equality and freedom." Then we start to march, Minnie and me. We look ahead and walk faster like him, clapping in time with our feet, looking ahead just like him. There is a sweet smell of roses, even as we march past the people who scream, shout, and say, "You are not right. Equality can't be yours." Then we look farther down the road and keep holding hands, feeling a part of it all, walking our way toward freedom. There is a sweet smell of roses as more people start marching with us, pouring out of the side streets, clapping and singing, "Freedom, freedom." Then someone, you want to do it with me? Freedom! Then someone picks me up and puts me on his shoulders. Somebody picks Minnie up too, and we are high above everybody, still marching. There is a sweet smell of roses as we all gather in the center of town, all together, all here, listening to Dr. King as the sun gets higher in the sky. He talks about peace, love, nonviolence, and change for everybody. Everybody. And the sun gets higher in the sky. When it's time to go, we skip back hand in hand, Minnie and me, singing freedom songs along the streets. Through the curb market, over the cobbled bridge, and past the mailman, to our house on Charlotte Street. Then there is Mama, worried face, waiting there for us. This was in a different time when kids just ran off and did things, right? We don't do that anymore. She smiles after a while, hugging us, then takes our hands. And as we tell her about the march, the curtains float apart, and there is a sweet smell of roses all through the house.
Wait, the only color things are roses and the teddy bear.
And the teddy bear. You know what? I'm going to bring this book out to we're going to go to the playground next, and I'm going to bring this out, and you can look at every page and find all the red things on every page. Yeah, let's go find them all. You don't have to. Okay, should we sing our breathing in and breathing out song as we go out to our class? Yeah?
Now begins our time of prayer and meditation, where we amplify our joys first from the poet Maggie Smith in her book, Keep Moving. Do not turn away joy, even if it arrives at an inconvenient time, even if you think you should be grieving, even if you think it's too soon. Joy is always on time. And we have sorrows, and we have grief. So I invite you to connect to the holy as you understand the holy, your ancestors, as Alex Capitan invited you, or the sacred stillness. Our dear friend of many names, whose greatest gifts are love and justice, we hold in prayer a father facing surgery after a heart attack. We pray for healing and offer gratitude to those who support us in our healing. We pray for those who are experiencing still isolation and estrangement, for ancestors we miss, for families who are grieving, including our own real family who have lost 2 sons to cancer in the past few months. For those in the job hunt, can be such a long and soul-challenging experience. We pray for you good news. For those grieving after overdoses or suicides from loved ones, for those who are seeking healing from their own struggles, who are on a path that needs support, we offer our support. For one who is waiting on an organ transplant, for all of us in transition. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be. In this time, we offer you our candle walls to light candles for your own joys and sorrows and the prayers of your heart. Now is that time. May your prayers be heard. In the spirit of Tomas's reflection, I'll introduce myself again. I'm the Reverend Erin Walter, and I am a cisgender, straight, white woman serving as your interim minister for joy and justice. And before I pass the mic back to my friend and colleague, Alex Capitan, I want to let you know a bit about why this trans inclusion and collective liberation work is so essential to our congregation, not just because we're in the capital of Texas, but because it is essential to our interim ministry process. So I want to tell you a little bit about that. It's not just that our Attorney General, Ken Paxton, ordered the Texas Department of Public Safety to compile a list of individuals who had changed their gender on their state IDs in the last 2 years, and then leaked that information to the Washington Post. It's not just that the Department of Family and Protective Services has spent the last year investigating trans-inclusive families instead of trusting Texas youth, their parents, their doctors, and counselors to make decisions for their own lives, as we wish to do for our own lives. It's not just that people are leaving Texas and therefore leaving our church. We have lost people, families who are afraid, rightfully. We miss them so much. And it's not just that trans welcome includes all of us and makes church more welcoming and inclusive for all of us. It's part of the interim process for a couple of reasons. When this church needed to find an interim minister, the search did not work out twice. Before Reverend Jonalu and I came to be half-time and drive in from Bastrop and come in 1 week a month from Oklahoma to make it work. And I know from talking to the transitions office at the UUA that one of the factors is that many UU ministers are trans or have trans spouses or non-binary spouses or trans or non-binary kids, and they would not want to move here to work. The same is true for when you go into search. Many of the leaders of our movement are trans or non-binary, their partners are, or their kids are, and they are amazing and fierce ministers, and we would be blessed to have any of them as our senior or new assistant or associate, depending on how this all goes. And it's a real challenge in a time coming out of the pandemic where we have a minister shortage. And so to do this faithful work, to have a significant portion of our congregation participate in a trans inclusion program will say a lot when the ministers look at the congregational search packets. It's important on a lot of levels. And I just want to say, if you know someone who didn't come to church today, I hope you'll encourage them to watch this service recorded online, especially if they weren't quite sure if this topic was for them. I also want to say that I led the youth listening circle. And if we have even a prayer of continuing as a faith, as a church for generations to come, we are going to listen to our young people, many of whom are trans and non-binary, and welcome them in the ways that they ask to be welcomed. It is a chance now for us to practice the spiritual concept of humility and listen. And I'll share with you before Alex takes over the words of Carla Siebert, your UU sibling in the Bay Area UU Church of Houston, who wrote this about the profound impact, she said, that even the first session of the Trans Inclusion Program had on her and her group at Bay Area UU. She says, "Beloved community sounded like a nice ideal when I first heard of it a few years ago, but it really was just a buzzword to me until Alex and Michael explained what it was and what it wasn't. I believe many in my group felt belonging last night as we understood and discussed how radical the idea of beloved community is. If, as a straight, white, upper middle class, cis female, I have struggled to feel belonging in several spaces I frequent, I can only imagine what the struggle and pain can be like for BIPOC, disabled, poor, LGBTQIA, and in particular, trans people. I want everyone to experience beloved community. And yet, Alex and Michael also remind us that beloved community is not devoid of conflict, and promise to help us learn to experience our conflicts and beloved community at the same time. She says, I'm so excited to learn. Experiencing conflicts and beloved community at the same time is interim ministry. It is the work of building this church, and it is exciting. And so I turn it back to Alex Capitan to tell you more.
Hello again, everyone. Thank you again so much for welcoming me into your sanctuary and for the gift of getting to share this space this morning. I've been a UU for more than 30 years, ever since my parents joined a UU church in a suburb of Milwaukee when I was 6. My dad is the son and grandson of Presbyterian ministers, and my mom was raised a devout atheist in small town Wisconsin. The family joke is that when they became UU, my dad's family all said, "Oh no, he's lost religion." And my mom's family all said, "Oh no, she's found religion." Which I think says a lot about our quirky little faith, right? I'm so grateful my parents joined my home church. It was a wonderful place to grow up. I gained an open-hearted curiosity about all the different religious paths and truths that people hold. I was taught to honor my own truth, even or especially when that truth was different than what was expected. I internalized the idea that living our faith meant working to make the world a better place and fighting for those who are oppressed. And as a queer and trans person, I was able to grow up without any sense that these deep truths about myself were at odds with my faith, because they weren't. My queer, trans, stubborn as heck teenage self was saved by Unitarian Universalism. As UU youth, we radicalized each other, exploring who we could be if we helped each other actively resist racism, heterosexism, and other oppressions. We created worship together in ways that were embodied and truly helped me feel the power of unconditional love. It was magic. In fact, I credit being raised UU to a large degree with my ability to be the person I am today. My full, authentic, queer, gender fluid, flamboyantly masculine and feminine all at one time, neither here nor there, Mary Martin as Peter Pan, bow tie flashing, motorcycle riding, roller derby playing, femme boy self. And yet, even though I was raised here in Unitarian Universalism, even though this religion has given me so much, I have never found a congregational home. You see, not actively making it harder for me to be myself in the world was not enough for me to feel a sense of unconditional welcome and belonging in my church as I grew into adulthood. Nor have I ever felt that way in any of the dozens of UU churches I've been to since. I've never found a UU congregation where I felt like my lived experience of Unitarian Universalism as a queer, trans, raised UU was reflected and honored. I am one of the 72% of trans UUs who do not feel as though Unitarian Universalist congregations are fully inclusive of us. 72%. My chosen family, my closest loved ones, include disabled trans people of color, and working class trans people. Only 20% of disabled trans people feel fully included in our congregations. Only 15% of trans UUs of color feel fully included. Only 11% of the most financially vulnerable trans people feel fully included. And this is no small thing, because trans people and trans UUs are more likely to be disabled, people of color, and low income. My friends, my heart is heavy because I don't just want to find a home myself. I want Unitarian Universalism to be the saving power in my people's lives that I know it can be. I want to be able to tell Black trans women and struggling queer young adults and LGBTQ refugees and asylum seekers and the precious trans and non-binary children and youth who are being targeted by horrific anti-trans legislation right now, and their families, that they can go to their local UU congregation, in person or online, and find healing and strength and resilience to keep up the fight for survival in a culture that is trying to annihilate them. But I can't. Because I can't trust that their local UU congregation will even be safe for them, much less a place of resilience. Can you hold this heaviness with me? Whenever I share my story about how I've never found a home in Unitarian Universalism, there are always a lot of people listening who think that's just because you haven't tried our church yet. So, if that's you, I see you. And I believe that this congregation, this wonderful community, deeply wants to be a place where I and my chosen family feel welcome. Am I right? I wouldn't be here talking to you today if that weren't true. But I need you to help me hold my heavy heart at the fact that for the entire 30 plus years that I've been a UU, Unitarian Universalism has told the world and has told me that LGBTQ people are welcome here. But that entire time, I have experienced that welcome as conditional. My whole life, I've known that I could attend any UU congregation and not be actively rejected as long as I wore certain clothes and said certain things and acted in a certain way. I've known that because I'm white and college educated and able-bodied, I can appear to fit in a way that many of my people can't. I've known that because of this, people would be friendly to me. But that's not the welcome I need. I need a welcome that isn't conditional. I need a welcome that goes beyond friendliness, goes beyond tolerance or acceptance. I need a welcome that's celebratory, a welcome that transforms hearts, yours and mine. And here's the thing. I know I'm not the only one here who is yearning for this sort of welcome. I know I'm not the only one here who has felt the saving power of Unitarian Universalism to transform hearts, remind us of our interconnectedness, and support us in loving one another across lines of difference. I know I'm not the only one here who has felt the need to leave certain parts of yourself behind, who has felt pressured to look or talk or act in ways that make you appear to fit in order to feel welcome here. You see, I'm not just in the ministry of welcome for myself and my chosen family. I'm in it for you, all of you. Because I know that in order to survive this world, this dominant US culture of division and intolerance and violence and environmental destruction, we need spaces like this one to be more than simply friendly. We need spaces like this one to be places where we can unlearn the judgments and assumptions and biases that have soaked into us from the outside world and practice healing the divisions that are tearing our communities and our world and our very souls apart. My Unitarian Universalism is not a community where we are all the same and we get to relax on Sunday knowing that everyone else is just like us here, a collection of all the good ones who have all the answers. My Unitarian Universalism is a community where we are all different, and we take joy in learning about each other and sharing in our different ways of making meaning. And we care for one another and one another's people, and we never stop asking questions. My Unitarian Universalism is a community where none of us feel like we have to leave any parts of ourselves behind. This is why my best friend, Reverend Michael Slack, and I created the program that this congregation has access to thanks to Texas UU Justice Ministry. TXUJM has sought out funding to help purchase this program for you and every other congregation in Texas. The program is called Trans Inclusion in Congregations, but it's about so much more than trans inclusion. For years, as trans UU leaders, Michael and I were asked to come teach UU congregations about trans people. People wanted to understand all the vocabulary. They wanted to learn what the right things to say were. They wanted to feel a sense of mastery over this new, unfamiliar terrain for them. And we got really tired. Because although as educators we love helping people understand things, going around doing Trans 101 trainings wasn't changing the things that keep us from finding a UU home. It was helping a lot of people feel like they intellectually understood trans people, but they still joyously sang songs about brothers and sisters and continued to misgender and use the wrong pronouns for every single youth who came out as trans or non-binary within the congregation and didn't make any changes to their women's group or their annual men's retreat. Their welcome was still conditional on trans UUs looking a certain way, speaking a certain way, acting a certain way, and honestly being willing to betray parts of ourselves in order to fit in. So we created a program that helps people really engage with the depth of what's required if we're serious about welcome. It takes you on a journey, starting with the theological grounding for welcome, our denomination and this congregation's gender history, and your own experiences of gender. We offer expansive frameworks for how to understand gender and sexuality, talk about the lived experiences of trans people of many different races, abilities, ages, classes, and sexualities, and discuss trans spirituality. The program ends with a conversation about culture and the difference between understanding welcome as a superficial friendliness and understanding welcome as a spiritual practice and an invitation to transform your heart, and about how to shift the culture of your congregation to be radically welcoming to all who are currently here and all who want to be here. I hope that if you haven't engaged with the program yet, you will, and that it helps you live into what it means to be a welcoming congregation in this moment. The program has 6 sessions, each of which includes a pre-recorded lecture from me and Michael, resources to take things deeper, and reflection and discussion questions. You can take it as an individual anytime, or you can experience it as a group, which is what we recommend. Go to txuujm.org for more info. This is one of those moments where UU congregations have a vital choice to make. Trans people are being actively targeted by lawmakers and other leaders throughout Texas and in many other states. And although there is fierce resistance and incredible organizing taking place, there are a lot of trans people, particularly young trans folk as well as their families, who are in deep need right now of safe, affirming, celebratory spaces where they can access healing and resilience and care. We can't be that sort of space simply by putting out a rainbow flag or saying that we are welcoming. We have to actively practice our welcome by being willing to stretch and change and grow. If it doesn't sit right with you, that despite all your best intentions and all your best efforts so far, there are people who don't feel fully welcome here. People among you right now, and people like me and mine. The question is, what are you willing to do about it? What are you willing to do in order for that to change? How can you resist the urge to already have all the answers and be willing to ask more questions, try new things, and transform your heart? You see, being a welcoming congregation is not a static identity, any more than being an ally is. It's not a sign you can put up or a box you can check or a statement you can make that means every LGBTQ person coming into your virtual or physical space will feel welcome. Because being a welcoming congregation isn't something you are. It's something you do. because welcome is a verb. It's an action. It's a spiritual practice. So I hope I can count on you to join me in this practice, because it is truly one of the most holy, heart-transforming, and world-changing things that we can do together. Amen. Ashe. Aho. And blessed be.
That was nourishing for our spirits, and I know our stomachs are also hungry. So we're going to skip the closing hymn and go straight to the offering this time. However, if you want to sing This Little Light of Mine, come see me at the social justice table and coffee hour, and we can sing it. We can do it. For the offertory, if you're online, you can give at austinuu.org. If you're here, the ushers will come around. If you're visiting for the first time, please know that your presence is gift enough. Everybody else, please give generously, because there are not a lot of churches like us, and we sustain us. The offering will now be gratefully received. forgot to mention that Caleb is also the music director for our siblings Wildflower UU in South Austin. That's right. And you can visit with them at the table where Caleb's albums are for sale after church. All right, brief announcements. We have a Vespers service this Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. right here. If you miss the Burning Bowl ceremony especially, a great time to come and burn things you want to let go of and set some good intentions. You can speak with lay leader Eric Hepburn. Eric, you want to wave if you're here. If you have some questions about Vespers, 6 p.m. Tuesday. This coming Saturday, you've been hearing about it, our Texas UU Justice Ministry and this church present the 10th anniversary gathering of the Justice Ministry. We will have powerful speakers on racial justice, gender justice, trans inclusion, climate and the earth, all the things that we care deeply about. I invite you to come. It's from 10 to 4 this coming Saturday. You can register online at our church center or come and talk to me. MLK parade is tomorrow. If you're planning to go, let's meet up over at the social action table afterward and talk about a meeting spot so we can march together. I know oftentimes people go as families, but maybe we could go together. There's so much. Please read your church emails. Please go Google First UU Austin and see what's going on. I'm going to invite Tomas to come up and extinguish the chalice.
So following in Reverend Aaron's footsteps, I'm going to reintroduce myself. I'm Tomas, and I am Latin, and I am cisgendered, and I, in the words of what the record producer told Caleb, I am gay and too gay, and proudly so. And now I invite you to say the words that we use to extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we hold in our hearts until we are together again.
We have some closing words from Alex.
Our closing words today are called Prayer for Living in Tension by Reverend Joe Cherry. If we have any hope of transforming the world and changing ourselves, we must be bold enough to step into our discomfort, brave enough to be clumsy there, loving enough to forgive ourselves and others. May we, as a people of faith, be granted the strength to be so bold, so brave, and so loving.
King, but the end is reconciliation. The end is redemption. The end is the creation of the beloved community. It is this love which will bring about miracles in our hearts. Amen. Blessed be.
As you go out into the world, take what you've heard today and take the lyrics that I write and apply them to yourself. In whichever ways you are, be proud of yourself and leave and help other people become proud of themselves too. You fell in love with a bad guy. You fell in love, yes you did. He took your heart and left you. He had the chance to be himself like never before. He couldn't bring himself to say he wanted more. Uh-oh, you don't really know what you're supposed to make of this. It doesn't matter if he wants a wife and kids. Oh, you're not a sin, you're not a sin, you're not a sin. You can be whoever you want, don't forget you're not like him. You wake up in the morning and you make sure you're okay. It's 10 years later, but these thoughts don't go away. wish you did. Oh, he took your heart and left you. Now you sit here and write music. He had the chance to be himself like never before. Keep clapping. He couldn't bring himself to say he wanted more. You don't really know what you're supposed to make of this. It doesn't matter if he wants a wife and kids. Oh, you're not a sin, you're not a sin, you're not a sin. You can be whoever you want, don't forget you're not like him. You wake up in the morning and you make sure you're okay. It's 10 years later, but these thoughts don't go away.